What's up, life group leaders? I'm back again. I hope the first week of life groups went well for you. I hope that you got a good chance to reconnect. If you spent the summer not gathering as a life group, I hope you got the opportunity to welcome new people or families into your life groups. I hope it was a time of building family and community together, but also just digging deep into the scriptures and asking the Spirit to form us more into the image of Jesus. And so I hope also you just felt equipped as we jumped into the book of Titus. I hope that video on the Bible Project over the overview of Titus helps set the stage for you and the people in your group if they chose to watch it or if you chose to show it in your first group together. But it really just set the stage and gave you some framework to understanding the letter of Titus as a whole, but also just some of these key themes and things that we'll hit on for the next 11 weeks. And it just led to good discussion. I think Drew did a great job kicking off our series, just thinking about this idea of a church being formed more by the culture around them rather than the gospel and the truth of the gospel, and just how Paul is beginning to speak into this young church, trying to reform them into the image of Jesus as the gospel and as the truth takes root in the church. And so this week, in week 2 of our Save for Good series, we're kind of digging into the meat of the text of the book of Titus. And Paul, he starts this letter off really strong with this idea of the importance of godly leadership in the life of the church. So for Paul, it was drastically important to give Titus these instructions in establishing faithful elders. And these men, these faithful elders, they were meant to be examples in sound doctrine. They needed to know their stuff. They needed to be rooted in truth. They needed to be able to communicate and teach truth effectively, because as we'll learn later in the book of Titus, these people were listening to teachers who were really crafty, but were teaching contrary to the truth. So they needed not only just a firm grasp of the gospel and of the truth of the scriptures, they needed to be able to teach it. But not just that, Paul also spends time just highlighting the character of these leaders. So for Paul, these leaders, these elders that were going to be put in place, needed to have lives that were worthy of emulation, because we become like the leaders that we follow. And for Paul, that is drastically important to setting the stage in correcting and establishing this young church to be a beacon in a city that drastically needed the gospel. And for us, I know this is drastically important even today. Just this idea of godly leadership and examples in the life of the church is inseparable from the fruitfulness of that church. And so a real practical application that you can do in your group this week is to pray for our elders at Northeast. There's a list online. Pull that list out. Let's pray for these men one at a time. Let's pray for the leaders who teach regularly in the life of the church. Let's pray for those who have influence in leadership in our church and ask that they would be bearing fruits of these characteristics that Paul highlights. And so I think this week 2 can just set up a good conversation about leadership and who are we following and who are we allowing to speak into our lives. All of us could probably spend time in our groups talking about good examples of leadership that we've experienced in our life, not even just in the church, but even in the world. Or we probably all have stories of, man, this was a bad example of leadership in my life. Maybe it was a boss or a professor or just a mentor who didn't do a very good job. I mean, that could be a great conversation starter for your group this week. And so Titus, we're kicking off this series strong, talking about leadership and how they are meant to be examples in truth, but also in godliness. This major theme in the book of Titus, that when the gospel takes root in you, it should begin to transform you. You should begin to bear fruits of that. And it starts with the leaders in the church. And so the elders should be models of that. They should be models of, I don't look like the culture around me. I look a lot like Jesus because the gospel has taken root in my life. And so I'm excited for week 2, excited for you and your groups as we continue to build on this series in Titus, and hope you feel equipped and empowered to lead your group well. So keep showing up, keep opening up the scriptures, keep asking the Spirit to work through you, and just spend time asking God to work. And so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We want to be for you guys, and we want to make sure you're good to go. And I'll see you guys next week as we continue to journey through Titus together.